Awesome. And present. All right, so welcome to Tailoring a Resume and Cover Letter. If you've been to any of these other career toolkits before, some of this will be a little bit redundant, but we get into some details here about what sections and how to customize different parts of your resume and cover letter. There's a couple reasons why you want to customize, and I think it's helpful always to start with, let me move this, always to start with some of the best reasons for doing something and putting time into this. We'll also give you some tips about how to do this without taking a ton of time. The job search process, the internship search process can be time intensive, and we like to offer you as many tips for making this process as efficient as possible. So one of the reasons you're going to customize is that you are going to focus on the employer's specific needs, which obviously is the most important thing for the employer, right? They need to know, or they have needs and they want to make sure that your skills match up with those needs. So you're really going to dig into the announcement and the company website to get more information. So that's sometimes the time-consuming piece of it. You know, each company is going to have a little bit different information in their posting, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. It's also important to customize so that you can get through an applicant tracking system. Typically, the applicant tracking systems will be scanning for skills keywords and experience keywords, as well as technology. So it's important, customizing your resume gets it looked at. I mean, the truth is that only 30% of resumes that are submitted even get looked at. So that means the 70% did not customize their resume to match with the necessary skills. It also shows that you're invested in the opportunity. It's hard to imagine from the applicant side, but hiring and interviewing, that's a very time-intensive process. Like, I can speak from experience. Every time I post a job and I'm hiring, I'm both excited about hiring someone new, but I'm also like, it's a really time-consuming process. And I can tell you that if I think an applicant is only kind of casually interested or barely interested in a role, I can't invest time in them. So this demonstrates to the employer that you're worth the time they're going to invest in pursuing you as a candidate. So let's get into how to customize the resume. I mean, I think that kind of demonstrates how important it is, but let's talk a little bit. I mentioned before 30% of job applications are read. So customizing according to skills keywords is dependent or will make or break whether or not your resume gets through an applicant tracking system. And these numbers are pre-pandemic, so that's really important to understand that these numbers are probably, jobs are getting more applications than they did before, and I'm gonna guess that still 30% are only getting looked at. So you're definitely gonna customize in the skills section. You're also gonna customize for immediacy. This is something we talk a lot about so that the screeners get information about you quickly that's specific to this job. Not information about you quickly in general, information quickly about this job. So when I talk about immediacy, here's some spaces where you can customize. So this, again, if you've seen these other presentations, I talk a lot about information architecture and skill-based keywords. But can I just say here, I can decide data and design intern. This is a great example. So when I was working with this student, their label was intern. In one version of this resume, we made it data and design intern. In another version of this resume that was going to be used for a kind of more traditional journalism fellowship, we called this media and journalism intern. So we changed the keywords both to create more clear immediacy specific to the role and to make sure that those applicant tracking system keywords were the ones that we needed. So that's how the customizing works. It's not necessarily going to be in the accomplishment statements on a resume, although there may be a word here or there. So for example, you might really highlight, let's say you did a project using Salesforce and you don't really highlight it in one resume, you might add a little more information about it if the job needs you to know that. But generally, it's going to be in job titles. It's going to be in how you describe your skills. And it's also going to be in the technology section of your resume if you have that as a separate section. Some people have technology integrated into the accomplishment statements, which works as well. But you're going to make sure that you're hitting on all those keywords from the job posting And then you're going to use words that they use to describe themselves as well. And we'll get into that when we talk a little bit about the summary. Other ways to use to add custom keywords in a resume is definitely, if you don't have a skills section, adding a skills section and making sure, and I just want to highlight quickly, sorry, I'm already talking way too fast. I have 3 hours of presentation straight, so I'm in full rocket mode right now. So in some cases, you'll have a technology section and a skills section as distinct. One of the reasons to do that, or one of the benefits, is that you can actually put in some of these non-program specific skills words. And these are all hard skills. I don't want any soft skills here, but it can be really useful. Now, if you are a tech person, you are not going to do skills and technology the same way. You're going to put your skills at the top of your resume, and you're going to have them sorted by the type of skill. So something like cybersecurity, networking, programming, and then a list of some of the knowledge you have. But for really almost anyone else, again, corporate accounting, a little bit different. But for anyone else, this is a really great way to make sure you're getting in those keywords that can be used to get past the applicant tracking system and to create immediacy, because the skills section is very skimmable. We talk a lot about having, like, the reader doesn't need to spend a ton of time to get all this information because it's bulleted already. In the next slide, I'm going to talk about how you can customize in your resume summary. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about featuring projects or class assignments in your experience section as a way to customize. So all of these summaries on this deck, if you've seen any of these other presentations, we love talking about resume summaries as a way to make a strong claim right at the top of your resume that is specific to the job. So for example, these are different summaries. These are not summaries for the same person, but for example, this first one, cinematographer, videographer, storyboard artist, producer, and editor with experience in, you could do experience or skills, feature film, documentary filmmaking, political media, and commercial advertising. Now that's a huge bucket of information. If this person were applying for a role where they were primarily creating video content for social media, they would probably call themselves content creator and videographer. You know, they would customize that so it's narrowed in on the job that they're applying to. And it's a great place to list the experiences and skills that are relevant to that job. So you might have 5 different summaries that you're using for the types of roles you're applying to, but this is and in some cases, you might only edit the summary. You might not actually have to go back and edit skills sections, etc. You might really primarily be editing the summary, and then the reader is going to skim for the evidence of that summary. And these summaries should be fragments. They should be no more than 3 lines, and they should just make a quick, strong claim about you. Sometimes folks will use emerging at the top. Sometimes folks will just say, you know, events and public relations professional. So this is one of the best places to customize on your resume. The other great way to customize on your resume, and this is where we get into a little bit of the difference between a functional resume and a chronological resume. A chronological resume is going to have one experience section that just goes in reverse chronology, okay? And sometimes that experience section is just called experience. Sometimes it's called relevant experience. Sometimes it's called, you could put a skill keyword there if it were all single kind of experience, so like accounting experience. A functional resume has multiple sections where you use skill keywords. Sorry, I'm getting 1,000 messages right now. Where you use different skill keywords to organize your experience. And this is one great way to integrate class projects. Why would you integrate a class project? Because sometimes it's the best way to get the skill keyword you need in there. This handout will be attached to the email I sent out so you can see all these examples. But this example here is just a research paper. And this person was applying to a role, I think it was like ACLU, think tank, you know, some like social justice oriented communication roles where research was a big part of what they would do. So they had a ton of their research papers on here under a research experience section. This is another example of someone who's in a more creative space, who was doing, applying for communication, social media roles, etc. So they took one of their class projects, a social media campaign, and put it in a section called social media experience. Or it could even be communications experience, media experience, etc. So you can see how some of these projects, if you map them into an experience section that is more functional than it is chronological, you can manage the experience of that resume and highlight the most relevant experience at the top by putting the most relevant functional section. I'm using the word functional 1,000 times. Are there questions about, make sure I have the chat open. Are there questions about anything I've covered? I know I talk way too fast. Not yet. Okay, I'm happy. You can unmute anytime and ask a question. Sorry, today's just one of those days where I have 3 hours of presentation straight. I think I'm only going to get faster and faster and faster, so I'm going to try and slow down. So the resume is really word choice, right? We're going in, we're editing our job titles, we're editing maybe our skills section, we're probably editing our summary. We might be reorganizing experience, renaming some things. Great. The cover letter is a much more intensive process for the job search and customizing. Let me quickly answer a question. How long should a list be on the resume? A skills list, it's all dependent on real estate, right? Your resume should only be 1 page. So depending on how much experience you have on there, it can be really hard. Like maybe some people who write a really good summary don't need a skills experience or a skills section, right? Because it's all up in the summary. So it depends on the real estate. There isn't like a hard answer. You just want to make sure, one thing I always remind people about the resume, it is not a catalog of everything you've done. Absolutely. It can't be. It can only be a snapshot that gets you the interview or gets you the cover letter to be read. And that's the other way to think about the cover letter. The cover letter is designed to provide nuance and context and a compelling argument for the reader, but still it should only be about 2/3 of a page. So I'm not quite sure if that answered your question, but it depends on the real estate in terms of how long any one of these sections should be. Okay, so the reasons for customizing are similar to the resume. But I think it's really important to understand that if someone has chosen to take the time to look at your cover letter, they're not going to feel the experience that you wrote this for anybody. Like that this is truly written. Like, I know you guys can picture these. I get these cover letters for career center jobs. And these are people who want to advise students. And they say things like, I'm really excited about using my skills at your office to help students, da, 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 da. And I'm like, I don't believe that you put any time into this or that you even know what this job is necessarily if you're not customizing it. I'm probably a harsher judge because of my job than other people are. But it is worth it to put time into this process. I definitely have some tips for how to make this an efficient process though. So here's a couple, let me just frame how we're going to customize the cover letter. So if you haven't seen our cover letter handout before, it's important to know that we recommend structuring the cover letter along, and there's a million ways to do it. This is only one, along a kind of strong claim like this. This, and this makes me an excellent candidate. Like leading with that in the first paragraph is important because, again, time. Recruiters don't have a ton of time to read this stuff. Your hiring managers don't at all. Like I said, it's a time-intensive process for the hiring manager. So you treat your brand statement as a thesis for your cover letter, and you make a specific, strong claim. Now, obviously, this has to be really customized. In some applications, I might lead with my experience in my academic setting. So let's say I'm a tech major, or we'll go with something like I'm a journalism major. I might lead with my academic background in journalism and media for some jobs. In other jobs, I might lead with my, let's say, creative experience as an intern and da-da-da. So like, it's all about order primarily, as well as groupings, right? Because none of these things, my A, B, and C, are not single things. They're a larger concept. So it's important to know what this claim is. Let me see if this slide, if we have a sample. No, we don't. So I'm going to show you really quickly. Sorry, this is the first time I'm giving this specific presentation. I'm realizing I would like a sample on this slide deck. So let me show you the DePaul Career Center library. So if we go to the DePaul Career Center and then we go to the resources page, we go to Career Library. I can show you the cover letter handout. And I'll show you an example of this strong thesis / brand statement. All right, let me make this much bigger because it's really tiny. We'll see if this, good, nice and big. Okay, so this is too long. We just wanted to give a sense of the kind of language you can use in a cover letter. My preference is that a cover letter be max 2/3 of a page. Okay, so this is the kind of strong claim I'm talking about. My robust experience in nonprofit marketing and data visualization. Notice the word robust. I'm leaning in on this. I am being as confident as possible. My academic background in research design and my passion for connecting diverse communities to health-focused resources make me a great candidate for this position. This structurally is customized for each role. In this one, why would I say why is my passion for connecting diverse communities to health-focused resources relevant here? Because this is written for a job where you are connecting diverse communities to health-focused resources. Like, you're telling them, one of the things that makes me really great for this role is that I care about this. Like, I want to do this. And that's meaningful to employers. But I'm also leading with experience in nonprofit marketing. I'm not leading with experience in marketing. I'm leading with experience in nonprofit marketing. And then my major here, I have my academic background in research design. Is that my major? No, but that's the specific background I have that's going to be useful. And this is, of course, not me, but this is going to be useful to that employer. So this whole thing is fully customized. That being said, as you write a couple of these, it's kind of like algebra. You're going to have a couple ABCs or XYZs that you plug and play in all of your cover letters. So it feels intense at first, but after you write a couple of these, you're like, oh, I'm going to take the first thing from this cover letter, the second thing from another cover letter, because some of the jobs will kind of intersect in terms of what those employers want. Does that make sense to everybody in terms of customizing this piece of it? Hope that does. I know, I talk real fast. All right, let's get back into, okay, some other tips for customizing. Obviously, that's really important. Oh, let me actually go back to this handout too real quick. Sorry. Let me go, sorry. Let's go here. So essentially, what I forgot to point out, if you haven't seen our cover letter handout, is that one way to structure this is to do claim A or A, claim 1 or A, evidence here. Claim 2, academic background or research design, evidence here. Claim 3, my passion for here. What I've been doing recently is messing with the structure. I often take the piece that, like, why you're the perfect fit because of you and them and all that intersection. I often move that up to here. So in fact, I'll do claim 3 and then 1 and then 2. And I'm providing evidence of that strong claim. So I know exactly what I'm writing in each of these paragraphs. Once I've written this statement, I know exactly what I'm doing. And most of this is really Frankenstein from any other cover letter I've written, because my experience is my experience. So these two sections in particular, you're not going to customize a lot, right? Where you're talking about, this is my experience, this is my background. You're not doing that. This one, I am particularly excited about this opportunity section. This is the most customization you're going to do in a cover letter. Absolutely. Because you're going to speak to them and their needs. The thing I see that doesn't work is I have a lot of students who write this section with what they're going to get out of it, particularly for internships. I'm so excited about this because I want to learn this, I want to do this, I want to do this. The employer does not necessarily care what you want. I mean, they do, but they don't. It's important in this section to say, I'm particularly excited about this role because, number one, I know exactly what you want me to do. Number two, I'm excited about what you guys are trying to do. And this is that research into the company and the website that you're going to be doing. You have to align yourself with them. So it's easiest to do this for nonprofits, obviously, because you say something about how you really care about what they're doing. It's a lot harder to do for a place like McDonald's, because what are you going to say? Like, I love cheeseburgers? No. You are going to say something about how you love this function, right? So if it's a marketing job, you're going to be like, I love marketing and I want to build a career in food marketing, right? So you can be even more specific. That's customizing to that industry. So they're like, wow, I'm going to be part of this person's progress because they want to work in food marketing and I'm invested in you. And I have like warm and fuzzy feelings about you as a candidate because I get to be part of that story and I get to help you get to the thing you want to get to. So this is really the piece that's the most customized. I would say this summary, most of this isn't going to change much, maybe a little bit in terms of the examples you use, but then this section about this position. And again, if you want to play with it, I've been moving this up to the second paragraph because I think that that part is really compelling to employers. And this other part is a little more skimmable and really, you know, restating or contextualizing something from your resume. In addition, this section, you can talk about who you are. So for those of you who have like any identities that you think are meaningful to the role you're pursuing, you can bring that in here. So for example, this is originally this cover letter I wrote with someone who her parents were immigrants and she was particularly passionate about communication and journalism oriented to non-native speakers. So in this section, she added like, as a child of immigrants, I'm especially interested in this cause because blah, blah, blah. So you can bring in your identity in this section if it's relevant as well, which I think is really great. And I think employers are increasingly looking at people as like, hopefully three-dimensional people with like diverse experiences. Questions about that? Okay, so some other customizing tips. In the cover letter, it's going to be really tempting to duplicate your resume. Don't do that. Really make sure that you're talking about how you're a distinctive candidate and you're a unique candidate. Definitely do some research. I mean, this is the time-consuming part, but it's a muscle you build. So once you start doing this kind of research, you get better and better and better at it. And you want to make sure you tell them why you want to work with them. And then really lean in on how distinctive you are, particularly if you have a non-traditional skill set or a career pathway. So if you're a philosophy major applying for a communications role, don't see that as a disadvantage, highlight how that's an advantage. If that's not something that you can intuitively do very easily, because I feel like a lot of the students I work with at DePaul, maybe it's generational, it's a lot of factors, have a lot of imposter syndrome. That's something we love helping you do in the Career Center. You can come in and say, hey, I'm applying for these kinds of roles. How do I sell myself? And we can help you articulate how your distinctive experience is meaningful to you. And this is something I've applied in my own life. I have a very non-traditional career path. I have an MFA in sculpture. And for a long time, I was like, I wasn't hiding it, but I was like not highlighting it because it's like, well, how could that matter in higher ed? And I was really leading with a ton of experience, which is great. But increasingly, I started really leaning in on it as like, this makes me different from other candidates. Like, and if you're not cool with that difference, you're not going to be cool with that difference anyway. So I might as well make it an advantage. That's an extreme example. Don't go get an MFA in sculpture unless you want to. And then I can give you a lot of advice. But that's something to think about, is really making yourself a different candidate. This is, again, where identity can be really meaningful. For me, I can't talk about my wildly banal middle-class upbringing in Joliet as like, it doesn't make me a distinctive candidate. You know, there's no story to tell there, but my academic background is. But for some folks, you know, ethnic identity, cultural identity, you know, family relationships, those can give you skills and tell a little bit of the story, and you can do that in your cover letter. So in terms of simplifying this process, like, I really believe in how important it is, but I also want you to help you make this something that doesn't take 100 hours. So we have a lot of advice. This is some content I've talked about before. So if you've been to our other presentations, you might have seen some of this. But the most important piece of this is organizing your search in a spreadsheet where you track the applications you do so that when it's time to do the next application, you recall a little bit about that position you applied to earlier, so that you're not, the last thing I want you to do is feel like you have to sit down and Frankenstein a resume or cover letter out of 5 different samples. No, no, no. We want you to be able to identify quickly, what does this job have in common with any other job I've applied to, so that you know which resumes and cover letters that you've already customized to pull from. So when I talk about organizing this process, of course, I think it's important to track your interest level and all this information, but I'm going to focus now, because we're talking about customizing, on the type of role and figuring out a labeling system for you about the type of role. So this is true for internships and jobs. I might have a type of role. For me, in my job search, my types of roles were academic advising, academic success, writing center, teaching, career advising, and arts administration. So I basically had, like, I guess I can't do math. I have 6 groupings, but then sometimes one was like a little hybrid of 2 of those or whatever. So as I applied for jobs when we moved back from Boston, I knew which cover letter and resume to use because I was labeling while I was writing them. So for example, this is one I did with a student who has a ton of research experience, particularly interested in social justice roles. So these are the groupings that he identified along the way of the kinds of roles he was applying to. And so did he have to customize for policy research? Yes. Did he have to customize for community outreach? Yes. The next time he got to a community outreach role, he had most of the customization done for that previous resume and cover letter. So this process is particularly important because you do need to prepare yourself, at least mentally, for applying for 200 jobs that are internships. I don't think you'll have to apply to all of those, but this process, you can see, takes this, customizing policy research as a resume and cover letter might take 30, 45 minutes. But customizing community outreach, the second time you do it, is going to take you about 6, 7 minutes. So totally worth your time to label the roles. If you have a ton of confidence that you're going to remember exactly what that job was and exactly what that role was without doing that, great. You have a better memory than I do. There's no way in the world that I would have been able to recall without labeling. Questions about this process of labeling in the job search spreadsheet? Okay, just quickly, I'm going to send, I have more content to cover, but I will be sending the slide deck recording and associated handouts. One of the things I'll be including is a template for this spreadsheet that you can copy. It's a Google sheet, so I'll be sending that out. Just a couple other pro tips. It can be really useful I talked a little bit about functional resumes, but here's like the slide deck explanation of that. Basically, creating skill-based experience sections is a way to customize. That can be really useful. You can rename them. You can, like film production experience, I might call this film production in one resume, but call it media experience in another, just because of the words they're using. So it just depends. I could even call this potentially journalism if that's what I was doing in that role. This is another pro tip that's not associated with customizing, but is associated with a high return. If you can send your application materials directly to a hiring manager, after you've customized them, of course, and after you've gone through the portal, this step is well worth the time it takes. And it is time intensive sometimes. For internships, it won't always say, for jobs, it won't always say who the position reports to. Sometimes you can do a little bit of work. This is also something we can help you figure out in the Career Center. You really develop a muscle for it once you start doing this, and we can help you do that. But truly, you're just trying to guess, okay, it looks like this is an entry-level role. I'm guessing it reports into this director, guessing what their email address is. If you're wrong, it just bounces back. This is a really good step. Are there questions about this? Because this is the one that most people are like, what? And I'm like, you have avoided the entire applicant tracking system if you do this. You are right at the top of the pile. So totally worth your time. Just is strange for some people to think about how they might do this. Any questions about how you would do this or why? Okay.
Yes, I have,
Oh,
ma'am.
sure. What's your question?
So as you said, like, how can we do that?
Okay.
And is it okay always to send materials directly?
Let me actually answer a couple quick questions while I do that. Okay, so what is considered too much labeling? I really think I would over label details and then figure out as you go along, maybe that wasn't helpful to like say, okay, nonprofit social media and marketing versus nonprofit social media. Like maybe those are two different labels, maybe they're the same label, only you really know what you should be doing like that. Let me show you really quickly. Let's do an example, and I have not prepared this, so this could fail. Let me see. Okay, great, we have plenty of time. I'm gonna go to Indeed. I like Indeed because it's such a messy job board, and it's very much like the Reddit of job boards. Okay, this is fun. I like this one. Okay, so this is a really cool internship. That's the other thing I want to make sure you guys realize. We are in an unprecedented time where, like previous to now, I'd be talking to, one of my conversations with students about interning or jobs was always, do you need to live in Chicago? Are you willing to go anywhere? And most people are like, I want to be in Chicago or whatever. Now you could intern at General Motors from Chicago. Like, boom, you don't need to be in Michigan right now to do things. There's all kinds of, a ton of media internships in LA that are remote. So boom, I'm really excited about that. All right, so let's go to this. I always look on the company side. So if I find a posting, I'm gonna tell you, we'll see if this works. This could be a total fail, but sometimes it's worth to try this and even just to guess. So I am looking at, all right, okay, remote, to reside and work anywhere. We believe strongly. This is, oh, wait, assigned to a high school team. Oh, okay, cool. So this is a corporate giving student intern, which is very cool. Like corporate giving is a very cool career space. You can help people and make money, which I love. So if you're interested in those kinds of roles, there's a lot of, I've seen a couple of these internships, and they're in the newsletter that went out today from Education Nonprofit. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna go to, interns are assigned to a high school team where they are partnered with 2 GM retirees to lead a group of 5 students. So now they are not telling me, okay, they're not telling me who this reports to, which is great because this is, I'll show you how to do this. Well, now I'm like, they have this YouTube video. Don't worry, I'm not gonna play the whole thing. I'm just curious about, they might have someone in the video talking about the program who manages it, because this program obviously has someone who manages it. I'll show you how I would find them on LinkedIn too. I'm gonna turn the audio off because really I'm just looking, I'll be looking to see if a person, if there's a talking head in this video. And it's the GM Corp story. Let me just do one of these guys where I can see if anyone's talking. Okay, these are some of the people who do it. Every single time you try and do this is going to be a little bit different. So if I were really applying to this and obsessed, I would watch this whole video and see if I can find someone, but I don't know, you guys don't want to watch me do that. So I'm going to go to, okay, it's in, the department it's in is in corporate giving. So let's get ourselves onto LinkedIn. And it's also in Michigan. So I know that I can limit my search to GM employees who are in Michigan, which is like going to be, I don't know, 20,000, maybe less, maybe more. So I'll get over to LinkedIn. This is, you got to have a LinkedIn profile ready to go just so you could at least use these tools. Okay, let me get into the search. Sorry, it's a little slow for me. Come on, search. General Motors. So I go to the company first. And I could Google this too, and I probably will. So then we go to people. These are all the people. Actually, I should have clicked on employees, but whatever. I think this is the same thing. Yeah. Then I'm going to do corporate giving, because that's the department it works that's in. Greater Detroit, down to 70 people I could choose from. If you didn't know who to send it to, Heidi Magyar would be a great person because she's the director of it. Now, if she were CEO, they don't have time. Director, they might. You would you could even send it to one of these coordinators. You could dig into here. I would not send it to a financial analyst, a finance manager, but I would potentially look at some of these profiles and go, I wonder if she says she supervises. Like in her experience section, she's coordinator. I don't actually know what she does. Let me see if anybody has a title that sounds like they. It doesn't actually. Oh, chief philanthropy. This is a great example. Am I going to email the chief philanthropy officer? Probably not. But the director, I might. Now, how do I figure out what her email address is if I decide to email her? One thing is when you email them, you can say, hi, I applied for this opportunity. I'm really excited about it. I wanted to send you my materials in advance for your convenience. Thanks so much for your time. If this went to the wrong person, please feel free to forward this to the correct hiring manager. And then boom, you don't have to be right every time you send it. But, and I'm not saying it would default to her. I'd probably do a little more work, but let's figure out what her email address is. Sometimes they have contact info in here, which is bonkers, and she shouldn't, and she doesn't. Good for her. So then I get into, you can tell, this is like one of my favorite things to do is help find people who you should apply to. Oh, that's someone else I was talking about in another session. Where am I? I have so many tabs open. Where's my LinkedIn? Okay, Heidi Magyar. So I forgot the R here. Let's go into this and add the R. So I will start with a Google search. It won't usually help me. Every once in a while, they have their email address somewhere. If I don't see it in the first like 6 or so, I don't really worry about it. Yeah, it gets real wacky over here. So then what I'll probably do is just do, I think they're .com, right? Yeah, and then I will do smith@generalmotors.com just to see if someone has put their email address anywhere on the internet. And I can't believe how few answers I got for this. So this person is saying, oh my goodness, this is, you can see it's a disaster. I'm already on Yahoo Singles and Dating. No, thank you. But what I like about this is if you guessed her email address was first name period last name @generalmotors.com, how would you know that it didn't work? Do you know? Anybody want to guess? How would I know if I was wrong? It would bounce. She would never know that you got her email address wrong. So you could try every email naming protocol, Magyar, Heidi.Magyar. You could try every email naming protocol, and the one that didn't bounce would be the one that worked. Totally worth your time. It's going to be different. This search is going to be different for every job, but that's kind of the skeletal kind of explanation for how I would normally do that. Does that make sense? Or anybody have questions? Sorry, I have everything open. Let me get back to my chat. Yep, Google search, good old Google search on the name works more than you would think. And then frankly, I know it didn't work here, the Smith @ but that works too sometimes. Like if you just put in the @ whatever, sometimes somebody will, let's try Forbes. I should prep these in advance, but I actually really like the chance of it. It's like chaos where you're like, will this work? Will this not? You'd be surprised how many people sign up for marathons or like adopt dogs and their email addresses are out there. But really worst case scenario, you could also go to Rocket Reach, but never pay. They will help you figure out email naming, but unless you pay, they'll tell you it could be this, 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 or this. And you're like, great, I'm not going to pay for that. So let's put in her Heidi. Did I already do Heidi? Oh, see, it's not even going to do it for me. It's going to make me try and pay. So forget it. I'll wait for somebody else to offer it for free. So Rocket Reach, generalmotors.com. And usually you'll be able to find this kind of thing where they give you every email format and then they say what percentage worked. So they're saying, oh, look at that, gm.com. See, I wouldn't even guess that. So it's a good source. Don't pay for it. Please don't. There's no reason. What other questions. Let me get that chat back open. And I'll get back into my presentation. I don't see my chat. Oh, I had my chat. Okay, let me quickly show you a couple more slides just to make sure you know about not only what we can do for you, but some upcoming events. Okay. The Career Library, a lot of the content I refer to is from the Career Library. That's on our website. We have over 50 handouts with sample requests, informational interview requests, all kinds of samples in here. We also have a Master the Interview workshop that's coming up, and a bajillion skills labs that we're going to be doing. These are just 30-minute skill commercials, so that you can get a sense of, are you interested in the skill? How would you upskill? The only one that's a little different that I would encourage anyone who's going to be doing a job search is this really cool salary negotiation research, where we're going to have a recruiter talk about the process, and that knowledge is golden. And then we also have, just want to make sure everybody knows about this program, Internship Plus. If you're thinking about interning in the spring, the deadline for this program is February 28th. If you're planning on interning for the summer, that deadline will obviously be later than February 28th. One of my pro tips for this program, this is for unpaid internships. One of my favorite things about this program is you can reach out to a nonprofit and say, dear, let's say, person at MacArthur Foundation, I'm applying for competitive internship funding for unpaid internships. If I am awarded this funding, will you host me? Like, I didn't even apply to an internship. I just created my own internship by doing that. Worst case scenario, they say no. So that's just a really cool something to think about. You would still have to apply for Internship Plus, but you're going to be more competitive for that fund if you have an employer agree to host you already. Then yeah, this is for unpaid internships, but in undergrads only. Right now, we are planning on growing it for graduate students, but currently we're still only offering it to undergrads. We want to make sure you know you can join a career community on Handshake. You'll get all of our newsletters. All the newsletters went out today, so if you didn't get any of them, that means you'll want to join one. You just edit your career interests on Handshake, and there's a question about which career communities you would want to be a part of. What's in those career community newsletters are jobs and events, and they're specific to those different industries. You can see the list right here. So I would pitch that for everybody. I'm going to stop sharing and see if I have any other questions. I'll also stop the record.